Anybody else late comes in, well, this will be on YouTube in a week, so they can watch it there. Good morning. Good morning. My name is Cory, Valencia. First, I'd like to thank the conference just for having me, allowing me, inviting me to present to you today. This is a really great opportunity for me to my small fledgling business that I'm doing. I would like to start my presentation with a story. And so this story goes, when I was in high school in San Diego, California, my mother and I were watching a segment on Dateline NBC. And this is a segment that talked about in utero surgery to repair the defect of spina bifida. And just as an aside, I hate that word defect. I hate it with a passion. I hate it. But I don't know another word for it yet. I haven't figured out a good replacement for that word.
Mistake.
It's still not a bad word.
That's
even worse. I'm trying to build up, not go down. If anybody can figure out a good positive word for that, it's great. And please let me know. Anyway, at one point during the episode, I turned to my mother and said, "Why would they want to get rid of people like me?" Until I asked that question, and that question actually took my mother back a little bit. It made her stop and think. Because until I asked the question, she'd always wanted spina bifida eradicated too. I can understand why there are some in the deaf community who feel cochlear implants are an attack on their culture. In many ways, that's what I feel in utero surgery is. An attack on an entire population of people, an entire culture of people. I feel that when talking about people with disabilities, sometimes society at large either forgets or refuses to see that we are a culture, not only collectively as people living with different challenges and circumstances, but that every group of people with similar disabilities each have their own cultural and social norms. As famous Paralympian Jean Driscoll once said, "Disability is a characteristic like eye or hair color. It is not a defining characteristic." Just as individuals with different nationalities have developed their own cultural norms based on shared experience, struggle, and most importantly, language, so too have people with disabilities. Our shared struggle is the struggle that many others face, and that is the struggle of equality. The struggle may not always look the same, but the goal is more connected than we may have previously believed. That's what this presentation is about. It is about the challenges and struggles we all share as human beings, whether we have an invisible disability, a visible disability, whether we were born with a disability or acquired at a later age, even those with no disability at all. Now, adversity is a great equalizer, but it is how we deal with that adversity that can be different. Throughout this presentation, I'll be sharing with you my journey through the adversities of life, giving you insight into your own struggles so that you can roll through adversity, take your personal power, and transition into what I call the new paradigm of disability. This is me at 3 days old. I know what you're thinking. Oh, how cute. What happened? I was born in Honolulu, Hawaii, at Tripler Army Hospital on September 26, 1981. So I just had a birthday. And my dad was in the Navy. That's why I was born that's why we were in Honolulu. My dad was a 26-year retired Navy captain. My birth didn't come with the greatest of circumstances, as I was born with spina bifida. I was born with an APGAR score of 2.4. Most babies born with this score, just to put it in perspective, most babies born with this score on that test don't survive, especially in 1981. Now, for those of you that may not know what an APGAR score is, it is a test that is given to newborn babies to determine the health at birth, administered first at a minute after birth, and then 5 minutes later. The letters of the test are an acronym that goes as follows. A for activity, meaning is the baby moving or crying. P for pulse, does the baby have a pulse or, a heartbeat. G for grimace or reflex irritability. Basically, how does the baby respond to pain stimuli, being pinched, being poked, things like that. The second A stands for appearance or color. Is the baby pink? Is the baby blue? If the baby's blue, that's not good. R stands for respiration. Is the baby breathing? The test is given on a 0 to 10 point scale, with 2 points going to each category. Most healthy babies score 7 or 8 at birth and either stay at that level or 10 5 minutes later when the test is given a second time. Now, the test is not used to determine the long-term health of the baby, but it's just to determine how the baby has handled the birthing process. Secondly, it is used to show how a baby is adapting to the environment around him or her. As I said before, I was born with a score of 2 at birth, which improved slightly, ever so slightly, to 4 5 minutes later. This meant that at birth, and even 5 minutes later, there were categories that I did not score in. I was either not breathing, or moving, or not responding to being poked or pinched, or even a combination of all those things. There were a lot of zeros on that test, I've seen it. The doctors told my parents that I would not live through the day, let alone 31 years later. They said that if I did survive, I would have severe physical and cognitive disabilities. Well, I like to point out that my doctors were wrong about a great many things. I usually like to say they got one thing right, but that's about it. That does not mean that my life has been lived without adversity. However, as Friedrich Nietzsche says, what doesn't kill us only makes us stronger. What I feel that Nietzsche's trying to tell us here is that no matter how bad a certain situation is, if you look at it a certain way, the challenges that we face in life are always meant to make us learn and grow. Most times, though, it is easier to sit back let our adversity defeat us. To give you an example, due to being born with spina bifida, I had 13 surgeries by the time I was 17 and a senior in high school. Now, most people will look at these circumstances and say, I can't do this. It's too much. I'll just sit back and let it defeat me. At times like these, I like to cling to a quote by Joel Osteen that says, every setback is actually a setup for a greater comeback. Meaning that every challenge that you feel is an impediment to your goal can and actually is helping you achieve your dreams. See, what I've come to believe is that we are more than our physical bodies. We are more than our disabilities. If we just allow ourselves to tap into our greater potential, we can shake off the shackles of disability, which I'll get to, and be confident in our personal power as we step into the new paradigm of disability. Now, there are many things that prevent us from living the lives we were meant to be. They hold us down as if we were shackled to the point where we can't move. In many ways, these shackles prevent us from both achieving equality as well as living to our full potential. In this section, I'm going to talk about the very real shackles of disability, as well as the shackles of perception that we have placed on ourselves. Excuse me. Have a little drink. I get dry mouth sometimes. I don't want to mumble through a thought. Now, in my opinion, one of the greatest real shackles of disability is poverty. The vast majority of individuals with disabilities, both in the United States and around the world, live well below the poverty levels of their individual country. The main difference between these groups is that here in America, we have a law that protects us from falling through the cracks. But, however, let us look at the areas where we do fall through the cracks. In my experience, the main contributors to the shackle of poverty for individuals with disabilities, at least in this country, are the institutions of Medicaid and Social Security. I'm sure many of you know what these programs are. Most of you know what these programs are. But for those of you that don't, I'll do a quick rundown. Medicaid is the government program that funds programs beneficial to people with disabilities, including, but not limited to, home health services, behavioral health services, and serves as the medical programs closely tied to the Social Security programs, SSI, not so much as it's DI, that's Medicare, but SSI. My issues with these programs is that in order to qualify for them, you must be at or below the poverty line to get the services you need to just get your basic needs met, like shelter or food. This is the same for Social Security. Or excuse me, this is the same for Social Security. And if you do qualify for at least SSI, the amount of money you receive will still keep you well below the poverty level. Now, if you do have a job, there is currently a program called Working Disabled Individuals, which allows you to earn more money than you could on either SSI or SSDI. This still presents a problem for me, though. I don't know if I can move over here for those of you who can't, or you're not straining.
I'm good.
This, like I said, this still presents a problem for me, though. I started my business, Joyful Expressions. I'm a motivational speaker and consultant a couple of years ago. And to be honest, I have real high hopes for the success of this business. And things are beginning to manifest for me. I'm doing some good consulting. I've got some, I'm obviously here speaking. So things are moving. But I have to admit, I worry about becoming too successful. Because I wonder, what would happen when I reach the threshold that is put out by Social Security and WDI Medicaid? The truth is, I need the medical insurance provided by Medicaid, as the costs for private insurance are so prohibitive for those with a pre-existing condition under the current system. In many ways, while Medicaid provides a safety net for individuals with disability in relation to health care, I feel that the current system we have now, puts complicated hurdles in place, which lessens the incentive to find employment, and in turn, places yet another shackle on us. This is the shackle of access. Access to employment and access to education. I'll get to education in a bit. First, as a social worker, I have worked with many individuals of varying levels of ability. The one thing I tell every individual I see is that if they have the ability to go to work and find gainful employment, go to school and find gainful employment, excuse me. It is my belief that regardless of severity of disability, everyone can be taught something. Whether it's how to work at Walmart, whether it's bagging groceries or being a door greeter, or working in an office building as a professional or paraprofessional, we all have the ability to learn and put that knowledge to use. Now, I read an article on the ARC New Mexico's website, and if you see here, I have the web address, and I will read it out for those of you that need it. It's arcnm.org/blog. And the author of the article talked about access to employment and two very distinct phenomena that go on concerning people with disabilities. It's a very fascinating article. You all should go and read the entire thing. It's great. One of these phenomena is that some employers will exploit the talents of employees with disabilities while paying them subpar wages. The other is that individuals with disabilities will work less hours and below their potential so that their medical benefits will not be compromised. Now, both of these phenomena are disturbing, but I'd like to focus on the latter one. The idea that we as a community would purposely hide or undersell our abilities is greatly disturbing to me. Greatly disturbing to me. Just as much as employers exploiting our abilities for less pay. That's disturbing to me as well. The implications are scary, though, as I don't think we realize the limitations this line of thinking places on us. Shaping our employment and career opportunities around whether we qualify for medical coverage, the medical coverage I spoke of, is dangerous as it closes off our minds to the possibilities that can occur if we used our full potential to be successful. Imagine if we put all of our efforts, all of our abilities into being successful. Where could we go? And I'll tell you where we could go in a little bit. I mentioned before that I feared my business becoming too successful, as I didn't know what would happen to my medical insurance. With that in mind, I'd like to mention that there were times where I would sabotage myself, meaning that whenever I felt myself becoming too successful or life was going too good, things were going too well, I would do something that would stop my forward momentum temporarily. Whether it be a paper in college or high school, I can remember a book report. I waited until the last night. It was due the next day, so my mom had to help me. Or procrastinating on a project. There were times in my life where I would unconsciously, even sometimes consciously, even sometimes when I knew full well what I was doing, I would sabotage myself because I felt life becoming too good. It wasn't until recently, though, that I became aware of why I engaged in that behavior. It stems from my birth and the belief that because I was born with the circumstances that most parents don't foresee, that I was both a burden and a disappointment to them. I will get into how this belief sort of crystallized in my head, the event that happened. I'll get into that a little later, but that's the idea. And it made me believe that I didn't deserve success. But here's the thing, I don't believe that that's a thought process that's just exclusive to me. In a way, I think we all carry the wish of, what if things were different? What if things had gone differently? What if I made a different choice? What if I was born a different way? What if I lived a different life? I can tell you for myself that if things were different, I wouldn't have gotten my bachelor's degree in social work from New Mexico State University. I wouldn't have had the opportunity to travel to Japan on a 16-day cross-cultural exchange on disability. And I wouldn't be sitting in front of you right now. Now, I mentioned that I graduated from New Mexico State University with my bachelor's in social work. It wasn't easy. There were times when access was difficult, especially not necessarily in college, but especially when I was younger. I can remember when I was in the 4th grade, I was struggling to keep up with the other kids in school. There was this class, about 40 students. I was falling behind. My grades weren't great. I wasn't failing, but there were C's, some D's maybe. So my mother scheduled an IEP and told the team to move me out of the school I was at, Chaparral Elementary, and move me to a school where I could get more one-on-one attention. I was not happy. This was not good news to me. I couldn't believe that my mom would move me away from my friends and the environment I knew and put me in a place where I knew probably 1, 2 people in the entire school. My mom believed, and I believe now, that least restrictive environment doesn't necessarily mean mainstream. A funny thing happened though. During that year, my grades improved dramatically, I caught up, and the next year I was back at my school with my friends and mainstreamed with assistance. Now I tell you that story to introduce my next shackle. That's the shackle of education, in which there are two. It's a two-pronged shackle, two forces that go on. One is an external force, and one is internal. The story you just heard is a perfect example of the internal effect of the shackle. I didn't realize it. Actually, I didn't realize it until I was writing the speech out to present. That the reason I was so upset with my mother for moving me to a school that I was familiar with is because I wanted to be seen as normal and not disabled by my peers. The problem with this, though, is that I didn't see my own limitations. I was blind to my own limitations because I wanted to be seen as normal. As individuals who live with the challenge of disability, and I use that phrasing very specifically, and you will see why later as well. I gotta tease you guys, keep you interested. We would like to be seen by our able-bodied peers as equals. What we have to be cognizant of, though, is our limitations. Is the fact that we do have limitations, and the places we have limitations. We have to be aware of the things we don't do well, and know how to ask for help. That's one I've struggled with a lot. Access in college was great. There were programs available to me. My problem was that I didn't ask for help enough. We need to find balance, though. There is a balance point. Because if we focus on our limitations too much, we will miss out on the opportunities life and the universe has to offer. Let me give you an example of what I mean. Well, I went to high school in San Diego, California, as I said, and I can't remember what grade I was in, but it was close to graduation, because my family and I were starting to look at colleges, so probably a junior, maybe beginning of my senior year. So, and I applied to some community colleges around the area, San Diego area. We did this with the thought that if I started smaller and worked my way into a four-year school, then the path would be easier. It wasn't until my counselor, my high school counselor, Jane Capitini, told my parents and I that, hey, he can absolutely go to a four-year school. He can absolutely go to a four-year university. That we truly looked at it as a viable option. So I applied to New Mexico State, and as they say, the rest is history. And by the way, not only did I go to a four-year school, I graduated in 4 years. That is something that, the average person, non-disabled, doesn't normally graduate in 4 years. So I graduated in 4 years too. I had become so out of balance at that moment. I had become too out of balance at that moment. By focusing on the things I may not have been able to do, I discounted the fact that, yeah, I'm smart. I get good grades. I can absolutely go to a four-year university. It's not a challenge. It's a challenge, but it's one I can deal with. The fact is, with this area and the other areas that I've already spoken on, and the ones I will speak to shortly, we have to find balance. If we hold our focus in one direction too much, we become blinded to either the areas where we need improvement or to the aspects of ourselves that can open the doors that we perceive are closed. Now, I mentioned an external component to the shackle, and it's the knowledge, or a lack of knowledge of our rights. I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir when I say that the lack of knowledge of your rights will shackle and impede your progress greatly, as it again limits your opportunities and what you believe is possible, and it leaves you open to being taken advantage of, and being led down a path that will not serve you. Like I said, as an advocate, I would help families in the IEP process. I used to work in independent living, so I would help with the IEP process. The one thing that always surprised me is how much not only parents didn't know the law, but the teachers and the principals and the school districts had no idea what the law was. And again, I'm preaching to the choir. It shackles your progress if you have people around you that don't know the law. Now, these next couple of shackles were really hard to place in the order of importance. I believe that both are major factors in what not only holds us back, not only keeps us as people with disabilities back, but what holds humanity back and moving into the new paradigm energy. But I'll start with this one. The shackle of entitlement. And I'm sure what you're thinking is, Cory, didn't you already talk about entitlement when you mentioned Medicaid and Social Security? I would say to you that I'm talking about the other type of entitlement, with the other definition in mind. The idea that just because you were born a certain way, the world owes you for the crappy situation you were dealt. Now, I'm familiar with this one, because it's one I dealt with. It's one I dealt with at times. There are times when I've been so bad at agencies like Social Security, like income support, DVR, that I've said, well, why don't they just give it to me? That's what it's there for. The thing is that, yes, even though resources like DVR, Social Security, IEPs, student services at a university, and income support are there with programs that can assist you in living your life comfortably, It is not something that is owed to you. Let me give you another example from my life that I think will help give you an idea of what I'm talking about. When I was in elementary school, I took the bus from my house to school. There were a lot of times when the bus would be really late, and my mom would have to take me to school, so I wouldn't be late. So I'd be there on time. Well, my mom and I would both be angry when the bus was late. We'd both be furious. I'd be upset because I was, and in a lot of ways I still am, a creature of habit. So anything out of my routine would throw me off. If the bus was late, I'd be like crazy for the next, not crazy, but it would certainly, I would not be doing well for the next couple hours. My mom had the idea, and I think I did by osmosis, that the school district owed me a ride because, darn it, I'm disabled and I need it. So one day, my mom realized that the school district didn't owe me a bus ride. Other parents took their able-bodied kids to school. They didn't use the bus. Well, the moment that this realization hit the universe, this realization hit the universe, from that day forward, we never had another problem with the bus. They would call us when they were going to be late, and they knew if they were more than 5-10 minutes late, we were gone. We were out of the house. The point is, when we invite strife and struggle into our lives, which in my mind is what really a sense of entitlement does, we will hit roadblocks wherever we go, whether it's with services, or school, or just a simple bus ride. For too long, the disability community has gotten the message that the service industry is our source, that the government will provide Social Security and Medicaid. Again, I say to you, these things are in place as a safety net, but they are not your source. You are your source. If you believe in the spiritual, then God, or however you name it, however you want to name it, God, Spirit, however you want to name it, that's your source. I want to mention another consequence of having a sense of entitlement will do. The idea that just because we are the way that we are, that we are people, that we are the way that we are, that the world outside needs to not only adapt to us, but it gives us free reign to treat people however we want. I was at a transportation summit once. Here in Albuquerque, actually, in January, it was a transportation summit. And someone mentioned a situation they had with a person in a chair. They would get in, they would get on, and of course it would take a little longer to strap them down, So the person in the wheelchair, they would make a joke about it. They would somehow make the joke and alleviate the tension, and the bus ride would be enjoyable. The provider said that he wished all people with disabilities could do this. I, of course, raised my hand. I raised my hand. I said, and I made the point that it wasn't my job as a person with a disability to make you feel comfortable with who I am. What I failed to mention at the time, though, was that just because I had a disability, I do not have the right to treat other people with disrespect and ugliness. I mention these things because I'm not immune to these. I'll admit it. I'm not immune to those types of feelings. I can't say that I've ever treated everybody with respect in my life. I'm sure I've been a jerk to someone in my 31 years.
Yes.
That's Mary Pierce. I work with her. She's the ADA coordinator for the city of Las Cruces. We josh each other all the time. But she's worse to me than I am to her, so don't believe her. There were times when I felt like the world, the people in it, even God, owed me because I was born with spina bifida. On the other hand, I am a social worker. And in social work, we work by a code of ethics. And we have a social worker in the room. And if you've not learned the code of ethics yet, you will. And the Code of Ethics, and one of the first tenets of the social work Code of Ethics, it's probably like the third one, it should be the first one, but it's probably the third one, is to treat everyone with whom you come in contact with, and treat everyone with whom you come in contact with basic respect and dignity. And I will read here that this is the social work Code of Ethics is divided into values and ethical principles. So the value that we're talking about here is dignity and worth of the person. The ethical principle, and this is only part of the ethical principle, it goes on from here. But the part that's important is dignity and worth of the person. Social workers respect the inherent dignity and worth of a person. Social workers treat each person in a caring and respectful fashion, mindful of individual differences and cultural and ethnic diversity.
That's right.
That's right. So if you're
I'm
gonna,
sorry, I don't know what he's trying to
He
alert
just
me
heard
to.
what he was saying. This is very important stuff.
he just wants to be involved. That's all. So if you're gonna, hold to anything from the social work values, that one's the one to do. That's important because it's important to treat everybody to dignity and respect, no matter how much you may disagree with them on a personal level. Everyone deserves basic respect and dignity. There are times when I disagree with Mary, and we can work. There are times we vehemently disagree with each other. But I respect her. I respect her opinion. I may not think she's right, and she rarely thinks I'm right, but she will respect my opinion. Now let's move on to the final shackle. Again, I'll say that I found which shackle to end this section on real difficult, as I think their effect is equally as great. This is the shackle of labels. When we talk about achieving equality and moving into the beings we wish to be, one of the hardest things to overcome is a label. Whether it is given to you by someone else or something you've adopted yourself, shaking off the negative connotations of a label is difficult. But why do we, as a society, feel the need to label things? Well, here's why. We do it as a way to make enough sense of the world so that we can function in it. So I was thinking about this when I was doing a speech before, and the idea of Sesame Street came to mind. I'm sure we all know what Sesame Street is. Specifically the sketch that went, one of these things is not like the other. One of these things that doesn't belong. Is anybody familiar with that one? That sketch? I remember it from when I was a kid. Now look, I'm not saying that Sesame Street's has an ulterior motive, is out to, sow the seeds of social discord. That's just crazy. But my point is that even as children, we're taught to look at what is the same and what is different in our world. It is no surprise to me, though, that knowing that, it's no surprise to me that when we get older, we feel the need to put not only objects, but people into easily identifiable categories. But the danger comes when the categories we start to use become generalizations for those same people. That's the danger. Excuse me. I mentioned earlier that I held the belief for a long time that I was a disappointment and a burden to my family. Let me now share with you the event that cemented that thought in myself, in my head. And so when I was born, like I said, I wasn't doing well. So my mother turned to the one place she thought that could give her answers: her faith. When she asked the priest at the hospital why this happened, the priest said, and I'm quoting, "He is a sinner, you are a sinner, and this is both of your punishments. This is your punishment." That comment set the trajectory of not only my mother's life, but my life as well. Now, my mother will admit at that time she didn't know a lot of things, but she knew that wasn't true. No God of hers was going to make a baby a punishment. Thus began my mother's search for meaning, which in turn, of course, it informed my worldview and made me question the labels that not only others would try to saddle me with, but the labels that I would give myself. We all have labels that we've carried a lot longer than we need to. They are personal labels that we've carried, but there are also some labels that we've carried as a community. I would like to go over some of them with you and examine the words as they are defined in the dictionary, and how they've been used to label individuals with disability. Once I do that, I would like to go over how we began to take away the stigma of these labels. The first word I would like to look at is the word retarded. We all know this one. We've all heard it used to label people with disabilities. Now, the actual definition, the dictionary definition of retarded is simple. It means a slowing or delay of normal progress. And it doesn't necessarily apply to a person. That could be to anything. However, when applied to people with disabilities, though, this is what it's meant. To us, it is meant being dumb, stupid, or less than others. Now let's move on to a word that for a long time was the accepted term, handicapped. Now I've read multiple meanings and origins for this word, but so let's go over a couple different meanings for the word. When applied to a sport like golf, it means that a person with a higher handicap can subtract more strokes from his score, thereby leveling the playing field. That doesn't sound so bad, right? I've also read that the origin of the word dates back to a lottery game in England in the 1700s called hand and cap, where a person reaches into a hat and can win a prize, usually money. That sounds like a good deal to me. If someone offered me a hat and I could reach into it and win money, I'd be like, I'm all over that. Now, when applied to people with disabilities, this word took on the implication of a person who was a beggar. It became a way to categorize and eventually demean people with disabilities. My point in looking at the definitions of these words is to show you that they are just that that's all they are, words. They're just words. They become labels, though, and therefore have power when they are used to describe an entire population of people. It is the same with all the shackles I've described to you today. If we let them, they have the potential to limit our vision and our thinking and hold us down until we can't move and become content with just existing and have no desire to truly live in the world. But that's the old paradigm of disability. The paradigm that focuses on what we can't do. It views the disabilities we live with as weaknesses that need to be overcome and fought against. So if that's the old paradigm, what does the new paradigm say? Well, the new paradigm views your disability not as a hindrance that needs to be fought against and overcome, but as an opportunity to grow into the person you were grow to the person you were always meant to be. To give you a clearer picture of this idea, as long as some language, to go with it, let's first look at person-first language. It's the language that's currently used for people with disabilities that we've developed. Person-first language is a language, of course, as you know, that was developed as a way to combat negative labels, the negative labels that I mentioned. It says that instead of saying disabled person, to say person with a disability. I must say, though, in my own opinion, I have a problem with person-first language still. I think it's good. I don't think it goes far enough. I still feel that it overly identifies with my disability. I do. So with this in mind, here's some language that I feel better emphasizes the value of the person. And I've used myself as an example. I've used my circumstances as an example. I'm a person living with the challenge of spina bifida. Like person first language, it lessens the emphasis on the disability, but it also strengthens the idea of a person living in unison with a disability rather than in contention with it. The new paradigm goes a step further though. While this language is how I would personally like others to see me, what's the message I'm telling myself? What am I saying internally? What's the belief going through my head? With this in mind, here's some expanded language that I've dubbed opportunity-based thought. And again, I've used myself as an example. I am a person living with the challenge of spina bifida, and through this challenge, I am gifted with the opportunity to learn, grow, and prosper into the person I'm meant to be. And that's the true message of the new paradigm of disability that I want you to walk out of this room with. That for every instance in our lives, whether we view it as a good or bad experience, a strength or a weakness, is an opportunity to grow in new and different ways. When we do that, I feel we will open ourselves up to things we once never thought possible. Before I end, I would like to acknowledge two programs that I'm involved with that I think perfectly exemplify this new paradigm ideal. The first is Project Enable through New Mexico State University. It is a program that encourages people with physical disabilities to obtain education, training, and degrees in science, technology, engineering, math, computer science. And the program manager, or the program coordinator for the program is here with me today, Karen Rankin. So if you have any questions about the program specifically, we can either do that during Q&A or after the presentation. If you want to come up and ask us a few questions about it, we'll be certainly happy to answer the questions. The other is the Dennis Bell Disability Arts, Cultural, and Citizenship Center. And I believe they have the artisans in the Artisan Hall, the Belonging Through the Arts booth, that's them. These programs perfectly illustrate the new paradigm as they are teaching individuals to advocate for themselves, not just through political means, but also through the arts, music, assistive technology and engineering, and a whole host of other things that many, including myself at times, had never thought possible. So again, I just wanted to recognize them. I would like to end with a quote by Esther Hicks, which I feel illustrates the new paradigm idea in that if we have the power, if we choose it, to write a new chapter in not just the disability movement, but in the story of humanity. It reads, a belief is only a thought you continue to think. A belief is nothing more than a pattern of thought, and you have the ability, if you try, even a little bit, to begin a new pattern, to tell a new story, to achieve a different vibration, to change your point of attraction. Thank you. And now I guess we can move into Q&A. If anybody has any questions about what any discussions, any debates, do you agree with me? If you don't agree with me, go ahead. I'll take it all. So we can open it up. I think we have just a few minutes left. I'm not sure where we're on time. We have about 15 minutes, so please.
What are some of your short-term and long-term goals for you to give an idea for anyone of us out there advocating, or I'm interested in what your long-term goals are? What do you see yourself doing in 5 years so we can see what?
Well, I hope their business still grows. I hope I'm speaking, not just in the United States, but not just in New Mexico, but around the United States, and hopefully maybe if I get lucky, maybe internationally as well.
And you have a Facebook page, or how?
Well, I'll get to that. I'll get to that. I'll get to that after the Q&A. I'll leave about 5. If someone can let me know when there's about 5-10 minutes left, I'll get to that. I do have information. So yeah, that's where I see myself. That's what I want to. And I think we should start thinking about that as people with disabilities. I think we're moving into a realm of possibilities that we never thought possible. You know, and part of the thing with the Dennis Bell Center that I like is that for a long time, I think we as people with disabilities weren't in charge of the message getting out. You know, it was the government, it was advocates, it was, you know, able-bodied advocates, it was the service industry that was telling our story. And the new paradigm, when it starts and when it really kicks in, is when we begin to take control of that story and see, again, you know, because I have, like I said, I'm up here advocating in a very different way, in a motivational way. But I also have a lot of other interests. I like movies, I like music. You know, you and I are talking yesterday, I'm a total nerd. I like sci-fi, I like science. I get into science even though I'm not good at math. I still find those things fascinating. So, you know, I thirst for knowledge. I thirst for knowledge in all areas. And I think that's when we're really going to become well-rounded people. And if we start advocating from our passion, from our passions, then people are really going to be able to see that we're not just people with disabilities. We have goals, we have passions, we have things that we're excited about. We get excited about a TV show, we get excited about, you know, movies, we get excited about, you know, the newest scientific discovery, the Mars stuff. I'm all about the Mars stuff going on. Okay. Ready?
Yes. As Cory said, I am the ADA coordinator for the City of Las Cruces. And I have to tell you that I wanted to sit in on Cory's presentation because I do a similar presentation, but because I don't have a disability, my viewpoint is different. And I would have taken your self-realization one step more, because most people with disabilities that I encounter want to be known as Todd. My name is Cory. My name is Mary. You know, with no other labels attached. And it's an active thinking process. For those of you who are who want to take that step into employment, I don't care if you're black, white, green, come in a wheelchair, come with a seeing eye dog, whatever. I care about your ability to do the job. That's all I care about. The rest of it, you know, a reasonable accommodation is a way of doing business. Okay? It is not any, we have to do this favor for. No, it's the law. Anyway, I'm very proud of Cory. He puts up with me, yes. I'm old.
A lot of years. You see all this gray hair? Not all of it is Mary, but most of it is. I'm just kidding. Mary's great. No, Mary is a great advocate. I know that if I need something, if I advocating for something, Mary's got my back. I know that. But yeah, she's right. You know, you're absolutely right. And the languaging, I'm hoping what the languaging does for you is as you repeat it to yourself, even if you don't have a disability, if you repeat some sort of form of that languaging, that you'll begin to see yourself as just that, just a person. Just that. I'm just Cory. I'm just Mary. I'm just Karen. You know, that's it. You know, I think there is a step further you can go. You know, and this is a developing theory for me. I'm sure in a few years, if when I present the same material, it's going to be completely different and completely realized and even more self-actualized.
I met Karen this morning just over coffee, and I was mentioning to her that I sat in on a seminar yesterday morning for a company out of Austin called knowability.org.
We're familiar with them, yes.
Oh my, really cool. And it has to do with technology and moving, we all know what ADA is, but it's moving the ADA requirements, if you will, for anyone needing to get into technology as teaching software designers in school how to teach the needs of anyone who has various needs on the computer. And it's really cool. Anyway, knowability.org, worth looking into.
Oh, absolutely.
Because what I see is that what the leveling field is going to be is technology.
Absolutely.
Isn't that cool?
Absolutely.
As
Yeah,
an
I know.
artist,
I
yeah,
completely.
writer.
I
Yeah.
completely agree with you, and I think this is why not only things like that, but things like Project Enable are great.
Mhm.
You know, because I look at it, you know, we all use assistive technology every day.
Mhm.
Why should we not be allowed to be in on the building process of those things?
Yes.
Why should we not be able to develop the wheelchairs, to develop the canes for blind people, to develop whatever, you know, just whatever technology, assistive technology you can think of, why should we not be involved? Because we know what works.
Mhm.
We know what works and what doesn't work. We know what works for us.
You can go on their site, I can give you that information.
No, we have it. We have it. Mary and I actually are, I serve on the City of Las Cruces ADA Advisory Committee, and we have had many discussions with our IT department about the website.
Oh, really?
Yes,
Oh, cool.
yes. It's been a long and arduous, mostly arduous, discussion.
Those of you who have websites with your different entity, Knowability can show you whether or not your website is accessible.
Discussion, yeah. And so yeah, we've been working with that. But again, that's where I think technology goes. That's where I think it goes, and I think it's going to work. Yes.
I'm just curious how you got started with your motivational speaking business, or how you kind of got into that area.
Honestly, it wasn't just because I wasn't getting hired for a full-time job, to be honest with you. It was really hard to get hired. I think, you know, most people with disabilities in here will agree with me that even though there's a law against discriminating in hiring practices, there's ways they can still do it. The things that really go against me as far as working, especially in the social work field, is driving. I don't drive. You know, one of the things is something I could alleviate myself. I don't speak Spanish very well. That I can alleviate myself. I can take classes. I can get Rosetta Stone and fix that. But I don't drive because of my vision. I don't drive. So I have my driver here, my uncle, Rich Maestas, here in front, and he's also my videographer / assistant, set me up with the music stand and helped me out, and tech guy, and all around awesomeness. So, but I have, but yeah, that's it. I wasn't getting hired, and it got to the point of, you know, what do I really want to do? That was really it too. I think, what is my passion? What is it that I really want to be doing? What is the story that I want to tell people? What do I want to get out to people? You know, what do I want them to know when they hear the name Cory Valencia? What do I want them to know? And that sort of blossomed into that, and so it's taking my experiences in life and sharing them with people. And look, I mean, I'm not going to lie. I know that my story is probably, you know, when people with other disabilities will look at me, they'll probably say, well, you had it lucky. You've only had 13 surgeries, you know, and you were born with you know, your dad was in the Navy, so you probably lived and had good health care, and I did, you know, I did, and I admit that, I realized that, you know, I'm extremely lucky. I'm extremely lucky, you know, my family, you know, my dad has worked hard for me and my family to provide for us, and I'm very lucky that I have that. But at the same time, we all have a story to tell. You know, whatever it is, we all share that struggle. You know, we've all gone through struggle and strife. You know, the level of it is different, but we've all gone through it, and I think we can learn from each other. Okay, so unless there's one more, I have time for one more question, but then I'll move to my informational slide. All right. Oops. This thing's so weird because you have to press the down button in order to go forward and the up button to go back. It seems counterintuitive to me. I don't know. So, as I said, I'm Cory Valencia. I'm a licensed master social worker. My number is, and I also have business cards if anybody wants to come up and get some. I have business cards. My number is 575-640-9619. I do have an email that's valenciaco2003@yahoo.com. My Facebook, I do have a Facebook page, business. Facebook.com/joyfulexpressions. That's expressions with an X. The other one was taken. They do, the other one that's taken, they do like decorations for like cakes and stuff like that. It's actually a pretty cool business. It's like a pretty cool business. We maybe I'll have to change my joyful expressions to like LLC or enterprises or something at some point. But I'll figure it out. And I have a YouTube. And this will be up, as you see, we're being recorded. I'm being recorded anyway. And this will be up on YouTube, hopefully in about a week, depending on how long it takes me to edit it and get it down. And I'm hoping, and please tell your friends if you want to see, if they want to see it. Please tell them I need views. So at some point I would like to have enough views on my videos, and I put all the speeches that I've done up on YouTube. I'd like to have enough views where I can sort of validate becoming a YouTube partner and start getting paid for these videos, because that'd be really nice. And also it'd be really nice because I wouldn't have to cut them down into 15-minute chunks. So that is Rolling with Joy. That is my YouTube video, so YouTube page. So anyway, thank you guys for coming in. I know it was a small crowd today. And enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you.
Evaluation.
Oh, yes, the evaluations. Please, if you could hand do your evaluations, and then put them up here at the front.
Where are they?
Right there.
I'll pass.
Yeah, Karen will pass out for you, anybody that doesn't have one. And then just keep them in the front. Thanks.